The words hit like a thunderclap in a quiet room. You're not allowed in company policy. It was 102 degrees Fahrenheit outside, the pool nearly deserted, yet my sister Emily, drenched in sweat and determination, sat at the gate in her wheelchair. Blocking her path was a woman in oversized sunglasses and a thick layer of sunscreen, arms folded like she was defending a fortress. I trailed 2 steps behind, a towel in one hand, sunscreen in the other, watching this absurdity unfold like a comedy with no punchline. The gate clanged shut behind us as Susan Hargrove, the self-proclaimed HOA pool enforcer, eyed Emily's chair as if it were a loaded weapon instead of a lifeline. She sniffed and declared, "Wheels aren't permitted on the deck, it's a safety hazard." My brain short-circuited, not because of her words, but because she believed them. Emily, who'd clawed her way through rehab after a drunk driver shattered her car and her spine 2 years ago, was being barred from a public pool funded by the HOA dues she'd paid religiously because of the chair she relied on. That's when I knew this HOA had just picked a fight they couldn't win. They didn't know me. They didn't know I spent my days in a federal judge's robe, wielding gavels against people who thought discrimination was a pastime. They didn't know Emily was the only reason I'd serve VY-VED law school, or that I had zero tolerance for CI-VYL rights violations. But they were about to learn. 3 hours earlier, it had been a typical Saturday. Emily had invited me to her new place in Willow Grove, a tidy planned community with flawless hedges and overly chipper mailboxes. She bought her townhouse 6 months ago, her first home since the accident after enduring surgeries, relearning to drive with hand controls, and facing job interviews laced with pity. This house was her sanctuary, built from every cent she'd earned freelancing as a graphic designer. It even has a pool. She'd texted me the night she moved in. First splash of summer? We'd packed sandwiches, loaded a cooler with iced tea and soda, and headed to the community pool, music playing, the world feeling briefly kinder. That lasted until we hit the gate. There stood Susan, a sunscreen-smeared gatekeeper, sizing us up like we'd rolled in a dumpster. Emily stayed calm, flashing her resident badge with a polite smile. Susan didn't flinch. "Chairs aren't allowed on the deck," she repeated, slower this time, as if Emily couldn't hear instead of walk. I stepped up. "She's not a chair, she's a person in one." Susan's lip curled like she'd bitten something sour. "It's not personal. It's policy." That word policized flimsy shield of every small-time dictator. I demanded to see it. She pointed to a laminated sign listing rules. No running, no glass, no unapproved floaties. Nothing about wheelchairs. Emily tried again. "I'm not swimming, just want to sit by the edge, dip my feet." Susan tilted her head, feigning sympathy. "The deck's not built for chairs. It gets hot. You might get hurt and sue us." I could almost hear her imagining the lawsuit. Emily's face fell not defeat, but exhaustion from too many battles like this. It wasn't just this moment. It was every subtle slight, every unseen barrier, the way the world quietly excludes those who need it most. I took a breath, years of courtroom poise kicking in. "I'm Judge Abigail Harper. This is Emily Harper, a homeowner here. She's protected by the Americans with Disabilities Act. Unless you have a specific, legal policy banning ADA-compliant devices, you're breaking federal law." Susan blinked, stammered, "I'll call the board," and fumbled for her walkie-talkie. "Please do," I said. "I'll be making a call too." I filmed the sign, the gate, Susan's sunburned scowl, and Emily waiting for dignity like it was a privy leg you had to earn. We left silently. I pushed Emily back to her townhouse as she clutched her towel, holding herself together. A few neighbors saw a mom with a stroller mouthed, "I'm sorry." A teen gave a thumbs up. An older man grumbled, "Susan's been at it for years." It clicked. This wasn't a one-off. It was a pattern. Susan was the enforcer of a rotten system, hiding behind vague rules and HOA nonsense. They thought they were untouchable in their suburban fiefdom. They were wrong. Back at Emily's, I made her lemonade while she stared at the pool brochure she'd once been thrilled about. "I should have known," she murmured. "It always happens." I sat across from her. "Not this time. They're getting the full Abigail Harper treatment." I didn't shout. I didn't need to. When I promised justice, I delivered, with interest. I grabbed my notepad, opened my laptop, and dug into the HOA bylaws. This wasn't just for Emily, it was for everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. By Sunday, the HOA board was scrambling, sipping weak coffee in a panic meeting. Susan played the martyr, insisting, I followed safety standards. If we let wheelchairs in, what's next, scooters? Drones? A few chuckled, missing the absurdity. President Mark Ellison, a man still coasting on a high school debate trophy, nodded gravely. We can't set a precedent. We're protecting the amenities. They thought it was a PR blip. I'd spent the night dissecting their bylaws relics from another era, vague enough for selective enforcement. It was deliberate, and it was illegal. Emily tried to shrug it off, burying herself in design work, but I knew she was hurting. You don't have to fight this, she said. I handed her an ADA guide. I'm not fighting. I'm enforcing the peace they broke. She hid a smile behind her mug. Soon, stories poured in. An elderly man scolded for his cane, a mom whose autistic son's float vest was unapproved, a teen with a prosthetic leg confined to the shallow end. I built a dossier: names, dates, photos. This was a culture of exclusion, microaggressions dressed up as rules. The HOA's rulebook was a mess, coffee-stained, half-edited, with a note about Wield of YCES they'd never finalized but still enforced. Sloppy and damning. Then came Brian Kessler, Susan's cousin, a strip mall lawyer who thought law order reruns made him a genius. He dropped a cease and desist letter at Emily's door, claiming defamation. I laughed, then wrote a 16-page response, burying him in legal citations. Emily said, "You scare me sometimes." I grinned. Good. I contacted a disability rights group, who jumped at the case a textbook ADA violation. Then I learned the HOA had taken federal grant money for the pool, tying them to strict accessibility rules they'd ignored. This wasn't just a lawsuit, no, it was an investigation waiting to happen. They thought it was a petty spat. They didn't know they'd awakened a federal judge with a sister to protect. By Monday, the story broke wide open. A bystander's video hit a local Facebook group, then spread like wildfire. News vans parked outside Willow Grove, headlines screaming, "Disabled woman denied pool access by HOA sister is federal judge." Susan told a reporter, "Wheelchairs damage the deck. It's about fairness, others don't bring furniture either." The silence was deafening. That night, a legal expert on air dismantled her excuse, calling wheelchairs not furniture. I filed a federal injunction, brutal, detailed, naming Susan, Mark, and the board, demanding audits, fines, and policy overhaul. The HOA imploded. Susan tried to resign, then backtracked. Mark blamed her. Residents live tweeted the chaos. Emily hated the spotlight, but couldn't deny the impact. Neighbors left flowers. A teen thanked her for his brother in a wheelchair. It wasn't about the pool, Anna Marie, it was about belonging. Discovery revealed emails. Susan joking about motorized folk. Mark calling Emily the pool Roomba. Vile, but gold for my case. They offered settlements. I declined. I wanted change, not cash. An anonymous package arrived: board notes, unfiled complaints, proof Susan had pushed for wheelchair restrictions months earlier. I filed it immediately. The HOA tried an NDA and a fat check. We said no. Some things aren't for sale. At trial, their lawyer, Darren, swaggered in with cufflinks and a binder, arguing the deck wasn't public. The judge shredded him, citing the ADA with precision. Emily spoke calm, steady about wanting sunshine, not a fight. I laid out the EVY Denke, violations, emails, the federal grant. The judge ruled for us: fines, audits, public notice to all HOAs. Susan quit for real. Mark followed. Emily joined the new board, reluctantly, at the pool's edge. The pool reopened with ramps, shade, and space for all. Emily rolled up in a new wheelchair, dipped her wheels in, and grinned. Cannonball next year? I laughed. Only if you beat them to it. Justice wasn't loud, it was a gate opening, sun on your face, and knowing no one's left out. That's what we fought for. That's what we won.